My name is Kelly Gardiner, and I am Jenny's colleague. We both work at the same company on the same product, Habbo. But I am the marketing designer for our game, so I handle all of the marketing design for Habbo. And today I am telling you about what it's like to design marketing for games, what you need to focus on, what kind of fundamentals really make marketing design work and allow you to target the right groups of people. I'm sorry if I sound a little rough or if I start coughing, because I'm still recovering from a cold. So if I lean away and cough, I'm sorry about that. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about myself and what my background is, how I got to this job in the first place. So this is a variety of different work that I've done in my own time. I do pretty much anything from animation to character design to illustration, logo art. I've even done things like websites. So I've kind of dipped into a lot of different art styles throughout the years. And when I started out my sort of higher education, as with Jenny, I was in animation. I studied here, graduated in 2012, and my focus was 2D animation with a side of like illustration, character design, basically anything that was traditional 2D based. I wasn't very much into 3D, though I did dabble in it. So for Habbo, which is a 2D retro pixel art game, this kind of background was very beneficial. With the sort of AAA games industry, having a level of 2D and 3D knowledge can be very, very useful. It depends what kind of departments you want to go into, whether it's concept art, marketing, like that kind of stuff, more 2D based. But if you're going into production, 3D, having at least an understanding of 3D and compositing can be very, very useful. So before I get into this part, when I graduated and was looking for a job, I spent a period of maybe 7 or 8 months in retail. I didn't manage to find a job within the industry for all that time, and I was, like Jenny, I was applying for pretty much every job I could find, whether my skills fit the requirements or not, because sometimes you learn on the job. So even if you don't think that you meet all of the listed requirements for something, as long as you have some of the skills that they are looking for, it's worth giving it a shot and seeing if you can get to that very cool interview step, which is very nerve-wracking, but if you get there, as Jenny said, is a sign that you are already kind of halfway there. When I did finally get my first job in the industry, it was at Habbo, and it was thanks to our friend and fellow animator, Caroline, and she basically put me forward for a junior production artist position, and I went in for an interview, and our art director, Jeff, saw something in my art, even though my pixel art was very rudimentary at the time. And I got the job, started practicing my pixel art first, but because I was an avid gamer, I had a lot of experience playing games throughout my childhood, I had an understanding of how games work from a customer perspective or from a user perspective. And this was a very, very key asset for me, because having a diverse group of perspectives and mindsets within a team really helps with ideation, with coming up with campaigns, with coming up with themes, with branching out to your demographics. For me, I was able to look at things from both an artistic and technical perspective, and I instantly noticed some of the issues with Habbo from a user side of how it plays. and I bought these up immediately, even though I had no previous experience in the games industry. And that's why Sulake was such a great company to go into, because they already had a platform for you to be able to communicate with each other. So if you can find that in a company, you're in a good company. So I'll go on to what marketing design is for games. I started in product design, same as Jenny, but our company decided that it wanted to consolidate all of its marketing stuff that was kind of sprinkled across all of the designers, which meant that it was very poorly planned. Nothing was very consistent, and it wasn't very efficient. So I took on the role of marketing designer. Everything fell sort of into my basket of workflow because I wanted to do more animated content. And with this in mind, we actually thought that we would be doing more YouTube-based video content, more social media content, more things with our IPs. But as it turned out, we don't have enough manpower for that. But we are working towards it still. So that is how, or why my role was created, so that we could actually have consistent marketing for a game. And this is what my day-to-day or month-to-month sort of schedule is like. So when I start out, see if the laser works, this is sort of Jenny's stage of production. So the design team will work on the product, they will go through all the way to the end. I'll help with the ideation side so that I understand what needs to be done for the marketing, but I don't actually work on the products themselves. And whilst that's going on, and a theme has been come up with, engagement and the copy marketing team, so the people who actually come up with the strategies for the marketing and user acquisition and stuff like that, they do the planning, and then once all that is done, they make the marketing design requests to me. We use a system called Trello to plan all of our products, have everything managed. It makes it way, way easier than just having everything through email. So they make all of those requests for me, and then my workflow is going through each of these 4 different marketing content or like asset creation periods. So generic marketing is basically the stuff that needs to be done every month. So this includes things like promotional material for products that we'll be selling on sort of a month-to-month basis, because we create new campaigns every month. Habbo has a very unique sort of marketing cycle in this case, because all of our content, it comes out continuously. It's a constant treadmill. One of our old marketing directors and user acquisition directors basically said Habbo is like an ever-increasing treadmill. And we've managed to sort of take control of it a little, like slow it down, get it into a much more efficient pace, but it's taken a few years. But with that, it's something that needs to be done every single month without question. Special content marketing is stuff like rares, limited edition things, special promotional items that are made, and so that's not something that happens every single month, but something that is incredibly important and needs to be focused on very heavily on my side to make it look really nice so people want to buy it. Engagement and supplementary content and social media supplementary content are stuff that doesn't happen every single month, but we try to at least include it in some fashion so that we can sort of help people want to come into the game, to want to re-engage with the game if they've fallen out. It can basically let people know that the game is still around and that it's still fun and that it's something that they might be interested in playing or replaying. And then once all of these stages are complete, and sort of like as I complete them one by one, I upload and document for all of the deadlines, make sure that everything is reached so that the workflow doesn't bottleneck too much. And by that I mean, if I don't get these stages done, then it slows down everything else that comes next. And it's the same for the production team, for the marketing and engagement teams. If they slow down on their production or don't meet their deadlines, then I can't do my work, and then other people can't do their work. So knowing your production line is very, very important, and making sure that you're self-managing your deadlines is also very, very key. This is an example of all the different kind of promotional material that I would make. Everything from creating sets to use across multiple different types of marketing that would be required, to smaller, more generic things that would be used for social media headers, for promotions on our website, or promotions actually in-game, because we have a landing view that allows you to see updated things like updated products, updated special offers. This is something that I started doing, I think it was last year or end of the year before, where we were doing illustrated comics and stuff based off of engagement storylines to sort of get people really in the mood for playing Habbo over especially seasonal content. So this was a Halloween one, and it ended up being a series of 5 comics and 1 standalone illustration. And this here is a crafting guide, which is used to post on social media to help people with some of the mechanics of the game. Because with crafting, it has like very specific recipes and stuff, and we have to make this kind of content readable across several different languages. So having no text, just numbers, means that I only have to create 1 image, which is way more efficient than creating images with multiple text, which you'll see later in the slides. So, fundamentals of marketing design. These are what I consider, through my sort of self-taught marketing design knowledge, of what I believe are the most important factors when it comes to doing your marketing design, knowing what needs to be done. So user base, brand consistency, visual clarity, information presentation, and the most important one, fun. So let's start with user base. When you're thinking about your user base, things like knowing your target audience, knowing the demographic is very, very important. So Jenny mentioned that our game is 12 plus, right? 13 plus. Okay, so 13 plus. Hideaway is 17 plus. So we each have very different age demographics, which means that most of our users typically age out at around 17, 18. We do have older users. Sorry, I think the mic's going against my t-shirt. We do have older users, but because they are not part of our typical demographic, we try not to include them too much in our production, like our production ideation. We want to make sure that because we are targeting a younger audience, that younger audience is safe within our hotel, which is why we have things like, we have people making sure that the spaces within Habbo are safe, that we have systems in place to stop things like grooming and targeting and stuff like that. And we want to reflect that in the things that we make too, and how we present the things to be sold, because we understand that these are children that we are selling stuff to. Habbo's gender demographics are mostly female, mostly feminine, but we do also have a very large amount of males that play the game as well. And most of our old users, I think, were more on the male spectrum. But when you are coming up with your demographics, obviously they won't be the same as Habbo's. Habbo's is across multiple different countries, languages, ethnicities, with genders defined mostly by what we decide the campaign theme to be. So we don't expect a lot of young men to be interested in a fairy tale forest campaign. But we will at least try to make sure that every single thing that we make can be accessed by both male and female users. So if they decide to have a male avatar, they can still wear the dress. It doesn't matter. When you're creating your game, knowing who you want to target, who is your target audience, is something that you should be deciding right from the beginning. And obviously this is for if you are creating your own game, like for a game jam or something. Knowing where you want to start and knowing where you want to go is very, very important. So understanding that is where I would recommend that you begin. But also understanding where your target demographics tend to go. So if you're targeting, say, a slightly older audience, Facebook may be more their jam. But if you're targeting a younger audience, Instagram is definitely somewhere that you will find people more prevalently. Using platforms like YouTube and stuff to collaborate with Let's Players or different communities on there can be very useful as well to make sure that your game message is being spread to the right audiences. Along with that, trends are also very, very important. Especially when it comes to your marketing, because you can really get on the back of a lot of very cool trends to help sell the stuff that you want to sell. So that is really what the user base is about, like understanding who they are, what they want, how to sell to them. Brand consistency is something that my role as a marketing designer really kind of wanted to focus on, because we were so spread out across many different people within our company with our marketing at the time. We weren't able to be consistent, and it meant that things like trying to understand what Habbo was supposed to be was very, very difficult. So what my main job was when starting this role was to kind of unify the identity of Habbo. And if you start from the beginning knowing what you are, whether you are an action game or an adventure game, or if you are a VR game, something like that, it really helps with making sure that everything that you present is going to be consistent. But things like experimenting can also be very good, and obviously switching things up for following different trends, for targeting different demographics is also very useful. Making sure that your brand consistency sort of follows the same theme at least is very important. Another aspect of this that really kind of sells what you want to make is making it recognizable. And this is why companies like Coke or Ubisoft and stuff, they have really immediately identifiable identities. But if what you're selling looks super generic, or it has no personality, or it just has a very poorly designed logo that you put everywhere, if people don't recognize who you are, then they're less likely to engage with your product. So making sure that everything that you have is recognizable and consistent across the board, so that people automatically go, ah, I know what that is. I know that that company is reputable. I know that that game is probably going to be fun because of all the other stuff that I've seen from it. It can be very handy. So things like logos, IPs, which are intellectual properties, art style, knowing your genre and your unique qualities of your games or of the game that you're working for is very, very good for making marketing that is consistent. This is an example of when we started doing illustration for our pixel art game. So we never did illustrated stuff before my role was created. We would do pixel art illustration, but that is really, really laborious. Pixel art is very meticulous with how it is made because it is literally pixel by pixel. You have to know what you're doing. And this is an attempt of me trying to do pixel illustration. It looks good, but it took me about 3 times as long as this kind of illustration, which is more done in Photoshop. It's more flexible, and it can add a little bit more personality to the game, a little bit of a third dimension. So over here is, this was actually Jeff's, our old art director. He came up with the original concept for doing it, and this was him trying to experiment with what it's like to translate a pixel art character over to illustration. And I built on it, deciding sort of like how the body shapes would typically look, different expressions based off of in-game expressions, and then this is kind of how it's evolved. So these are in-game avatars of the characters from this series of comics. So I had these to use as reference along with some of the items from that campaign. This is an example of the different items from a campaign that we did for Christmas being turned into illustration. And basically I would kind of inject a little bit of character into these for social media content, or for animated content on YouTube, which we did at the beginning. The benefit of this is that we still look like Habbo, we still look like our brand, but it just has an extra dimension to it. So you're able to engage with the content a little bit more than you would if you were just in-game. Visual clarity and information presentation. This is vital for marketing in particular, because if the people who are viewing your marketing don't know what you're selling, that's going to be a big no-no for everything. And also, if any of the information you're presenting is incorrect, again, lashback from the community, and you have to end up changing it anyway. So knowing what is the most important thing on the asset that you are creating is a good place to start. But using things like color, layout, products, like being able to frame the products correctly, knowing what text needs to go on it and what resolution needs to be done by, allows you to present it in the best way possible and to enhance the intent of that material. So say you want to sell your physical copy of a game. Say you work for a company that, say you work for Game, and you were tasked with making print material for selling the latest Assassin's Creed game or something. Your main job for creating that print material would be to make sure that everyone knew that there was a physical copy of the game available, that any extra things like any promotional content, maybe like a ultimate copy or something for people who want to spend extra money on DLC content, or like a blade that you can get with an Assassin's Creed game. Knowing that that is the stuff that needs to be highlighted on that, as well as knowing that it's an Assassin's Creed game, so you're probably going to want to make it look a certain way. Like you're going to make it look action-packed, you probably want to put the character on it. You may even be given branded material to put together. Knowing how to put that together so it's visually appealing but also clear, so that if people look at it at a glance, they know exactly what it is before they even really read that information. That is why this kind of stuff is important. But with getting correct information down, if you've ever been really, really anticipating a game coming out and you see a post about it on Twitter where they say like, deadline is, I don't know, September 2nd, 2027, I don't know. And then all of a sudden the next day they're like, production delayed, game won't be released. And you're just like, why? Why did you give me that information when it was useless? That is why we try to make sure with our marketing design, with any of the assets we create, that the information is correct from the beginning. This is what I was talking about with doing different things in different languages. So this is some of the stuff. This is another crafting chart just to sort of show that sort of visual clarity element, making sure that everything is kind of put into its boxes. All of the numbers next to stuff are the correct percentages, so that if somebody crafts something and it's a lower percentage, then they should know that this is the correct percent chance that you get. There are some times where we do get it wrong. Human error is always a thing. But trying to make sure that few people check it beforehand is a very good idea. For things like doing different languages for very similar graphics, you have to keep in mind that languages don't always work the same way. So you're going to get some that are very easy to read, very short, very easy to fit in a space. And then there are going to be some that just like look complete, especially if you're not used to the language. They look way long. You have to use like a completely different text font or different text format because you have to make sure that people can still read it no matter what it says. This is something that we struggle with doing for 9 different languages. So we make sure that we don't have a lot of text on our marketing material unless we really, really need it. And that's usually for third-party content, for when we really, really need it. So keep all of these aspects in mind for when you're creating marketing material, especially as visual artists, because those skills will really come in handy for stuff like that. Lastly, fun. Doing marketing design sounds very boring when you talk about it, because a lot of it is based off of trying to sell things, trying to follow trends, trying to keep statistics in mind, trying to make sure that what you're doing is the most efficient and also the most productive as possible. But users and customers really, really respond well when you instill fun in something. So they want to be able to connect to you as a company, connect to your product in some way before they've even bought it. Because if they can't connect to it, why should they bother? A lot of companies do try to include elements of fun in their stuff. Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding is a very good example by sort of saying how the production's gone with everyone not really knowing what it's about. It kind of puts everyone in the same box. It's kind of, it sounds like a mess, but it's actually kind of masterful in its strategic methods. But things like companies like Nintendo, they will do things like parody characters or cameos in their work from other products or from other companies' products that they're working with. Or companies will put things like Easter eggs in their marketing material to kind of get you interested, to see if you can look into things a little bit deeper, to see if you can get invested before you've even invested money in something. This is some of the fun that I've tried to inject into our marketing across the years. This is the most recent one we've done, or I've done, and with it, it was kind of like Where's Wally kind of thing for Habbo. So I included as many IPs as I could. I included some of the staff characters in it, and I also, because of BTS going on their world tour, I also included BTS in there. But I wanted to make it as fun and as lively as possible, whilst also making it actually sell the campaign. So as well as the characters, it also has some of the Fernie illustrated from the campaign in it. So you get a feel for what the campaign is supposed to be before it's even released. It kind of makes you want to be a part of it. It makes you want to go into the game and be a part of that party. We've also done things like when we launched Android, our Android version of Habbo a few years ago. We were selling a little Android plushie in-game. And so when I created that piece of marketing, I wanted to sort of have that element of like the little aliens from Toy Story and make you feel like you were one of them. So it's just that little bit of extra quirkiness to it. And you got things like Frank, who is our sort of mascot character. For when we do blog posts and stuff, we often put him in funny outfits or put him in funny situations and stuff, which the Habbos tend to really love because they have a soft spot for Frank. I created a meme by accident. I kind of showed an image to one of our colleagues and he was like, this looks like a meme. So I made it into one and we posted it on social media. The Habbos also enjoyed that. And like for this campaign, which was Jurassic Park themed, I tried to make the guy look like the main guy from Jurassic Park, just to add that little bit of extra depth to the marketing so people can look at it and go, oh, that looks like the guy from Jurassic Park. So now that I've gone into, oh yeah, that's fine, I'm nearly done. So I've gone over all of the marketing design stuff. Now I want to talk a little bit about what I believe are the most important skills for when you are just working in the games industry in general. Things that I've noticed from working in Habbo, from talking to other people that have worked in the industry. Number one, and I think this is number one in any field that you go into, communication is so, so key. And this is anywhere from you going into an interview and being honest about yourself and communicating yourself as effectively as you can, to being able to sit down with your CEO and tell them why you believe that the idea that you have is a good idea for the company, which is something I actually tend to do on a regular basis because our hierarchy isn't super domineering or anything, so you can just send an email to the CEO in Sulake and be like, I think this is a good idea. But being able to communicate with your team, being able to sort of get on the same page and being able to resolve conflicts before they become something that's going to damage your work is so vital. And we've worked really, really hard in Sulake to make sure that we have methods in place, we have platforms in place to be able to do this effectively. And if you're in leadership roles, like me and Jenny are, being able to trust your teams, but also keep them informed is really, really vital. Next up, planning. Planning is kind of an obvious one. Making sure that you are self-managing, but that you also have all of the stuff that you need from all the relevant places within the different departments. So things like the workflow that I showed you at the beginning, making sure that things don't bottleneck too much, making sure that deadlines are met. You can cut a lot of the mistakes, a lot of human error done, out when you go into planning phase. So making sure that you are keeping consistent with your planning and making sure that, again, you communicate with other people to make sure they are also keeping consistent is a really, really vital skill. Expanding your perspective. This can really change per individual because it really depends on what you find interesting, what kind of skills that you have already, and what kind of skills that you want. For me, I expanded recently into languages. So I've been starting to learn Korean recently, and I've been learning Japanese for the last 2 years. And what this has really helped me with is being able to understand things from different cultural perspectives, which is really useful when you're working for a game that has several different countries under its net. So just being able to step out of what you already know, to step out of your comfort zone bit by bit, being able to embrace new things, embrace new knowledge, even if it's outside of what your work requires. It can not only help to expand your perspective, to give you something new to present in your work, but it can also stop you from getting stressed. It can stop you from feeling like your work is getting stale, to stop you from getting burnt out, basically, which is something that if you watch a lot of YouTube, a lot of YouTubers talk about getting burned out, and it's because they just sit doing the same thing every day. So making sure that you're trying new things, and expanding your perspective can really help with lots of different aspects of your work and your life. Playing games, again, kind of an obvious one, especially if you're in the games industry. But I've also known a lot of people in the games industry that barely play games at all. And you don't have to. It's not a requirement of being in the games industry. But it can really, really help with you understanding where your users are coming from. If you are a customer or you are a user of a game, you start to understand what you look for when you are purchasing a game, or if you are downloading a game from the store, or trying to choose between a few different ones. Playing games really helps you to build a game that you would want to play. And it helps you to ask yourself questions from a user's perspective, like, if I didn't know what this level was supposed to look like, if I didn't plan out myself, would I be able to figure it out? If I didn't know how the mechanics of this game worked, would I still be able to play it? So I would recommend playing games if you're not specifically trying to target for the games industry because you're in something like animation or something, but you do apply to a games job. Even if it's just casual mobile games, it's still something. It still gets you used to how these things are presented. Lastly, challenge yourself. Get a little bit out of your comfort zone, but also make sure that with your work, you are actually trying to push yourself into areas that you feel need to be fleshed out. But also make sure that you are challenging yourself within your job role to make sure that you are fulfilling the role that you've signed up for, but also doing a little bit extra if you can, even if it's in your own time. Like, I do a lot of my own project stuff outside of my job. But know that you can achieve a lot more than what you think you're capable of. You only have to believe that you can push yourself that little bit further. And knowing your limits and being able to push those boundaries will not only make you more prepared for going into the industry, into a company, or creating your own game, it will make you more prepared for facing a lot of different challenges. And being a more well-rounded person, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what gender you are, no matter what age you are, it can be so, so useful. Knowing yourself and challenging yourself are something that I believe is an incredibly important part of being a person. Thank you very much.